We start 600 kilometres above the Earth, as George Clooney in a spacesuit floats about a bit and chatting shit, whilst his colleagues called Sheriff and Dr. Ryan Stone are calmly repairing the Hubble Space Telescope. Apparently, this is Dr. Stone's first mission in space, which means veteran pilot George Clooney in a spacesuit is totally taking her space virginity. Kinky! Anyway, Mission Control suddenly comes over the blower and warns them that the old Ruskies have only gone and shot down one of their own decommissioned satellites because reasons, and the dopey fuckers have now totally caused and a rapidly expanding cloud of space debris is fast heading their way. So naturally, they try to get the heck out of Dodge, but much like my problems in the bedroom, the little bullets come way too fast, and they're soon under attack by more scrap debris than a junkyard, receiving a fresh new load of unsold Disney Star Wars toys. And whilst George Clooney in a spacesuit is busy molesting Dr. Stone and fiddling with her ropes, that poor sheriff geezer, who we haven't even properly seen or met yet, randomly dies in the background. And before you can say,
that escalated quickly,
a piece of junk severs the arm that Dr. Stone's attached to, sending her flying, and soon finds herself tumbling through space, and presumably setting all sorts of galactic gymnastics records. After she takes some time to gather herself, and once the director is done showing off some more fancy camera work, she reports her coordinates and is miraculously saved by George Clooney in a spacesuit. Huzzah! Once they tether up to each other and start to make their way back to the Space Station Explorer, he tells her to set her watch for 90 minutes, cause that giant cloud of space junk is totally gonna
circle back
for round 2, so they gotta be ready and shit. Unfortunately, the Mission Control fellas are totally ghosting them and won't return their calls for love nor money, so they decide to go get the body of their recently deceased colleague out of respect, where Dr. Stone proceeds to respectfully stare at the giant gaping hole in the face of his corpse.
Damn!
Also, unfortunately, the entire Explorer station is more ruined than the backside of an aging porn star, so now they have no choice but to float over to the International Spacey Station so they can use this escape pod called the Soyuz to get back down to Earth. Naturally, George Clooney in a spacesuit uses the commute to ask her about her backstory, and she reluctantly concedes that she ain't got much of a life back home after her 4-year-old daughter tripped over at school and totally died because reasons. Not a joke. So now all she does is get up, go to work, and then drive around aimlessly all night. So, because she used up most of her oxygen yapping about her tragic backstory, they need to haul us over to the ISS. But her heroic saviour is almost out of gas, but seems to be more worried about not being able to beat his mate's spacewalking record, and only needs 10 more minutes to totally defeat him, bro. But meanwhile, Dr. Stone's oxygen meter is going off, and she just says, I don't give a stuff about your stinking spacewalking record, because I'm about to suffocate to death. So get us over to that dodgy space station and shut up about it already. So after narrowly missing said station and hilariously cutting their tether in half, Dr. Stone manages to save herself by accidentally getting her legs caught in some random parachute ropes, and just about manages to save George Clooney in a spacesuit from being lost in the depths of the void. But the ropes soon begin to loosen due to how much weight the two of them are exerting on them. So said Clooney fella decides to do one of them self-sacrifice things after essentially being fat-shamed by a broken parachute. But more likely, he probably just don't fancy being stuck up in space with such a morbid and miserable git who drives around all night in her spare time whilst thinking about dead kids. Although vowing to go save him despite him now being miles beyond any practical rescue attempt, he then tells her that although the Soyuz's chute is already deployed and is now more useless than a bottle of diet water, she can still drive it over to the Chinese station to nick one of their escape shuttles and shit, as the re-entry protocol is identical to the Explorer's, so get your butt in there and shut up about it already. Once she finally makes it inside said station, we finally get to meet our heroic protagonist, Dr. Ryan Stone, who looks suspiciously like that bird what loved driving buses too fast back in the 90s. And she soon starts stripping until she becomes a fetus again. Or some shit. And after getting no response from the spacesuited Clooney fella, she somehow knocks herself out whilst trying to put out a fire. But she eventually escapes and heads down into the Soyuz to get the heck out of Dodge. But unfortunately, the parachute lines get tangled with the space station, so after she goes out to try to manually cut them loose, that blasted shrapnel cloud reappears what's full of space junk and shit. And it looks like it's curtains for the #1 Sandra Bullock looky-likey fella, but the Soyuz is miraculously blown clear without enduring a single piece of catastrophic damage.
Nice.
But because this poor bird just can't catch a break, her shuttle totally runs out of fuel before she can reach the Chinese station, leaving her stranded in the middle of space again. Suddenly though, a Chinese voice comes over the radio and she naturally cries Mayday and shit. But this rude guy just laughs in her face thinking that's her name, because turns out he's just some rando messing about with radios back on Earth and is totally not any kind of last minute Asian saviour that's coming to rescue her useless ass. So she proceeds to have a complete mental breakdown and starts howling like a pooch 600 kilometres above the Earth. And she then cries like a little bitch when she realises how much of a total loser she is back in the real world and how she has no friends or family that will even mourn her when she's gone. Aww. Anyway, after a baby on the radio reminds her of her own dead kid, which makes her have another little cry, suddenly that George Clooney in a spacesuit fella appears and gives her a pep talk whilst waffling around some vague story of how he survived and shit. And after he tells her to man up and get over her relentless grief already, she wakes up to a bunch of alarms blaring in her face and an empty seat right next to her. 'Cause turns out he was just a ghosty ghouly spook, conjured from her own hypoxic mind now that the oxygen levels are dwindling and shit. But she soon gets a fucking grip and decides she don't want to die today, and uses a random fire extinguisher to fly over to the Chinese station. But the Asian space station is quickly losing altitude, and once inside, she mashes a bunch of buttons to make it do something, cause she totally don't know hieroglyphics or whatever strange letters these noodle munchers use to write in shit. Luckily, the shuttle totally detaches, and both her pod and the station start skimming the atmosphere before burning up faster than a Hillary Clinton witness. And after the director is done ripping off the opening title sequence from that Smallville show back in the day, Dr. Stone drops like a stone and directly into a random lake. And because she's a super smart doctor lady what is certified savvy enough to go all the way into space, she has the bright idea to open the hatch instead of waiting for the local military to come and save her dopey ass. So naturally, this stunning and brave-born survivor almost fucking drowns after surviving all that time in an airless vacuum. And it looks like it's curtains yet again for the #1 highest paid actress in 2010 and 2014 who loves being congenial, before she starts stripping again and swimming directly into a bunch of reeds like a riot wally. Anyway, after she finally reaches the surface, she emerges from the waters like an ancient amoeba, before pounding sand and then awkwardly walking off like she has a really tight and irritating wedgie. And that's it. That's the movie. Though my favourite part was where George Clooney in a spacesuit finally broke his rival's spacewalking record by turning himself into a corpse and letting his body float about in the cosmos forever. Oh, what a legend! And although his character was fairly ridiculous, I suppose 90 minutes of George Clooney in a spacesuit is better than having to sit through 5 minutes of George Clooney on ice skates again. God damn! Anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering in that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.